They abandoned humanity to die. Now it's payback time. Part 1. The emergency sirens wailed across every city on Earth. People looked up at the sky with fear in their eyes. Giant screens in city squares showed the same terrifying image, a massive fleet of alien ships approaching Earth. These weren't the ships of the Galactic Confederation, their supposed allies. These belonged to the Draconis Armada, the most feared warriors in the known galaxy. Commander Alex Winters stood in the control room of Earth Defense Station 1, his hands gripping the edge of the console so tightly his knuckles turned white. On the main screen, Admiral Zakthal of the Confederation forces looked back at him with 4 cold, unblinking eyes. "I repeat, Commander Winters, the Confederation fleet is withdrawing from your solar system," the alien said. His translator gave his words a flat, emotionless tone. "The Council has determined that Earth is strategically expendable." "Expendable?" Alex shouted. "We're talking about 11 billion lives." "The Draconis Armada outnumbers our combined forces. The math is simple. We can save trillions by sacrificing billions. Your species has only been part of the Confederation for 15 years. Your contribution is minimal." Alex watched in disbelief as the Confederation ships on his tactical display turned and jumped into faster-than-light travel, leaving Earth completely exposed. The largest military alliance in the galaxy had just abandoned humanity to face extinction alone. "Sir," a young officer said from behind him, her voice shaking. "First impacts in the outer colonies on Mars and Europa. Total destruction. The Draconis will reach Earth in less than 24 hours. Alex's military training took over. There was no time for shock or anger. "Send the code. Activate ARC protocol." The officer nodded and entered a series of commands. Across the planet, hidden entrances to 50 massive underground shelters began to open. For the past 10 years, ever since joining the Confederation, some in Earth's leadership had suspected this day might come. They had prepared in secret, diverting resources to build these last refuges for humanity, but they could only save a fraction of the population. In her laboratory beneath the Rocky Mountains, Dr. Samantha Murray worked frantically. Screens around her displayed complex equations and simulations. For years she had been studying the advanced technology the Confederation had shared with Earth, or rather, the limited technology they had been willing to share. "They never trusted us," she said to her assistant. "They gave us just enough to make us useful but held back anything that would make us their equals." Samantha had suspected the Confederation was hiding something crucial in their gravitational field technology. The past 3 years she had been working to fill in the gaps in their knowledge. Now, as destruction approached from space, she had finally made a breakthrough. "It works," she exclaimed, watching as the test device in the center of her lab created a small but perfect gravitational distortion field. The Confederation lied about the fundamental principles. They said it was impossible to manipulate gravity at this level, but they've been doing it all along. Her assistant looked at the device with wide eyes. "What does this mean?" "It means, if humanity survives the next few days, we'll have something the Confederation never wanted us to have. A way to build ships faster and more powerful than anything in their fleet." Samantha's computer beeped with an urgent message. "It's the ARC protocol. We need to evacuate now." Across the globe, the scene repeated itself millions of times. Families torn apart as lottery numbers determined who would enter the shelters. Parents giving up their spots for children. The sick and elderly volunteering to stay behind. Humanity at its worst as people fought desperately for survival, and humanity at its best as others showed unimaginable courage and sacrifice. The shelters were designed to house 50 million people total, less than 0.5% of Earth's population. Everyone knew the math. Everyone understood the impossible choices. Alex left the defense station in the hands of volunteers who would stay to coordinate whatever resistance Earth could muster. His security clearance meant he had a guaranteed place in Shelter 12, the same one where Samantha's lab was located. The surface roads were clogged with abandoned vehicles and desperate people. Alex took a military transport through underground tunnels, arriving at the shelter entrance as masses of people showed their authorization codes to grim-faced guards. "Commander Winters," a security officer greeted him. You're one of the last. Priority personnel to arrive. We're sealing the doors in 20 minutes. Alex nodded. How many made it? We're at 97% capacity. 1 million people in this shelter alone. 1 million saved here, Alex thought. Out of 11 billion. The weight of that knowledge was almost unbearable. Inside the shelter, he found Samantha supervising the transport of her equipment to the designated research level. Their eyes met across the crowded reception area. Did you get it? He asked when he reached her. She patted the secure case strapped to her side. Everything. All the data, the prototype, the materials. If we survive, Commander, I promise you, this will make them regret abandoning us. The ground shook violently. The first impacts had begun. Somewhere above them, cities were being destroyed. 12 hours later, the massive doors of all 50 shelters were sealed. Deep underground, protected by layers of advanced materials and technology, humanity held its breath. Surface sensors showed the Draconis ships methodically bombarding every continent, turning forests to ash and cities to rubble. In the command center of Shelter 12, Alex watched the final transmissions from around the world. The last human ships, putting up a futile resistance. The final broadcasts from government leaders who had chosen to stay with their people. The desperate messages from those left outside the shelters. And then, one by one, they went silent. The last transmission came from the Confederation. A formal message coldly delivered. We regret that Earth cannot be saved. Your species' sacrifice will be remembered. Alex turned to the room full of military and civilian leaders. They think we're done. They think humanity ends today. He gestured to Samantha, who stood by his side with her case of secrets. They don't understand who they're dealing with. They don't know what we're capable of. He addressed the room, his voice growing stronger. We have food, water, and power for decades. We have the best minds humanity has to offer. And we have something the Confederation never wanted us to have. A reason to prove them wrong. Samantha opened her case, revealing the small device inside. We also have this, the key to technologies they deliberately kept from us. Starting today, Alex continued, everything we do has one purpose. Survival is not enough. We're going to rebuild, we're going to recover, and then we're going to return to the stars. His eyes hardened as he looked at the final message from the Confederation still displayed on the main screen. And when we do, the species that abandoned us will learn exactly what humanity does when backed into a corner. This isn't the end of humanity. This is just the beginning of their reckoning. They abandoned humanity to die. Now it's payback time. Part 270 years passed since the day Earth burned. Deep beneath the surface, humanity survived and planned. Frank Daniels walked through the massive underground hangar of Shelter 12 watching as workers put the finishing touches on the newest ship. The vessel gleamed under the bright lights, its sleek design unlike anything the Confederation had ever built. This was the 10th ship completed in the underground facility, and the 50th overall across all surviving shelters. Frank had never seen the sky. He had been born 30 years after the attack, the grandson of one of the original shelter engineers. All he knew of stars and planets came from simulations and the stories told by the few elders who remained from the time before. Beautiful, isn't she? Dr. Lisa Carter appeared beside him. At 45, she had already spent 20 years continuing the work of her mentor, the legendary Dr. Samantha Murray, who had died 10 years earlier at the age of 93. The reckoning, Frank said, nodding at the ship. Biggest one we've built yet. Lisa smiled. And the most powerful. The gravitational manipulation drive is twice as efficient as our previous models. She can outrun and outmaneuver anything in the Confederation fleet. This was humanity's greatest achievement since the catastrophe, the development of technology far beyond what their former allies possessed. Using the breakthrough Samantha had made just before the attack, Lisa and other scientists had perfected a propulsion system that could bend gravity itself, allowing for speeds the Confederation had claimed were impossible. Captain Russell will be pleased, Frank said. He's been impatient to take command. Eric has waited long enough, Lisa replied. We all have. The two walked toward the ship as automated systems conducted final tests on its weapons and shields. Neither of them noticed an old man watching from a viewing platform above, his eyes filled with a mixture of pride and grim satisfaction. Commander Alex Winters, now 95 years old, was one of the last survivors who had witnessed the betrayal firsthand. Though his body had grown frail, his mind remained sharp and his purpose unchanged. He had spent 7 decades preparing for what would come next. Later that day, 5,000 people gathered in the main assembly hall of Shelter 12. Similar gatherings were happening simultaneously in the other 49 shelters around the world. After 70 years of isolation, the shelters had developed their own cultures and accents, but they remained united in purpose. Frank, as chief of operations, stood on the stage with Lisa and Eric Russell, the captain chosen to command the Reckoning. Beside them sat Alex in a hovering chair, his presence a living connection to the world that was lost. Today marks the completion of Project Vengeance, Frank announced to the crowd. Our fleet is ready. A cheer erupted from the gathered people. Many wept openly. For generations, every resource, every innovation, every sacrifice had been dedicated to this moment. The Confederation abandoned us, Frank continued when the noise died down. They left us to die, believing that would be the end of humanity. He gestured to the massive screen behind him, which displayed images of all 50 ships that now made up Earth's secret fleet. They were wrong. Eric stepped forward. At 38, he represented the best of the new generation, born underground but trained for the stars. Using automated mining vessels, we've spent decades harvesting resources from our solar system. Our stealth technology has kept these operations hidden from Confederation long-range sensors. They believe Earth is a dead world, its people extinct. Lisa took her turn at the podium. Our probes have gathered intelligence from across Confederation space. We know their strengths. We know their weaknesses, and they don't know we're coming. She brought up a new image on the screen, a map of nearby star systems. Our ships can travel faster than anything they have. Our weapons use principles they don't understand. But our greatest advantage is this: they don't know we survived. Alex gestured that he wished to speak. The room fell completely silent as Eric helped him to the microphone. His voice was thin but carried the authority of one who had seen humanity at its darkest hour. I was there when they left us to die, he said. I promised then that if humanity survived, we would return to the stars and hold them accountable. He looked out at the crowd, at the generations born underground who had never known Earth's sky. Tomorrow, the first 20 ships leave our solar system. Not for revenge alone, but for justice. Not just for those who died, but for all of you who have lived your entire lives beneath the surface of a ruined world. The old commander paused, his eyes moving from face to face. They must learn that humanity is not expendable. They must understand what it means to betray us, and they must never be allowed to do this to another species. After the ceremony, Frank found himself in the command center with Lisa, Eric, and Alex. Around them, technicians made final preparations for the mission that would begin the next day. The surface sensors show the radiation levels have finally dropped to tolerable levels. In some regions, Lisa reported, in another 20 years, we might be able to begin limited resettlement. Alex nodded. All the more reason why this mission must succeed. Our children should know what it feels like to stand beneath an open sky. The Confederation has changed since the attack, Eric said, studying the intelligence reports. The war, with the Draconis, weakened them. Several member species have rebelled or withdrawn. Their territory is smaller, their fleet stretched thin. Perfect timing, Frank commented. There's something else you should know, Lisa said, bringing up a new data file. Our deep space probes detected evidence of human presence outside our solar system. The others turned to her in surprise. Explain, Alex demanded. Before Earth joined the Confederation, we had already sent several colony ships to nearby systems, slow vessels, designed for multi-generational travel. The Confederation never included these colonies in their records. They either don't know about them or they didn't consider them worth saving either, Frank finished grimly. Correct. But at least 3 of these colonies appear to have survived. They've developed independently, unaware of what happened to Earth. Alex's eyes gleamed. Additional allies, perhaps, or at least safe harbors if things go wrong. Eric studied the mission outline one final time. 20 ships, 20 targets. The Reckoning will lead the fleet to Proxima Centauri first. It houses a major Confederation outpost that monitors this sector. Remember, Alex cautioned, this first phase is intelligence gathering only. No direct confrontation unless absolutely necessary. We need to establish our network throughout their territory before revealing ourselves. Frank looked around at the others, the scientist, the captain, and the old commander. Each represented a different aspect of humanity's response to betrayal: innovation, action, and memory. 70 years ago, they decided we weren't worth saving, he said quietly. Tomorrow, Operation Lazarus begins. The dead return to life. Alex nodded slowly, his eyes fixed on the image of the Reckoning displayed on the main screen. And the Reckoning begins. They abandoned humanity to die. Now it's payback time. Part 3, the Reckoning emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Proxima Centauri system. The ship's gravitational drive left no energy signature that Confederation sensors could detect. To any observer, the vessel simply did not exist. Captain Eric Russell stood on the bridge, watching as the tactical display showed the position of the Confederation outpost orbiting the system's second planet. After months of travel, they had reached their first target. Stealth systems functioning perfectly, reported his second-in-command. We're completely invisible to their scanners. Eric nodded. Take us closer. Standard orbit, opposite side from their station. The Reckoning moved silently through space. The crew worked with focused intensity. None of them had ever seen an alien before, except in historical recordings. None had ever been in space until a few months ago. Yet their training in the simulators had prepared them well. Lieutenant Karen Walsh entered the bridge. As head of intelligence operations, she had spent years studying Confederation communications and security protocols. My team is ready, she told Eric. We can begin infiltration as soon as we're in position. Karen was 34, born 2 generations after the attack on Earth. Like everyone else on the ship, she had spent her entire life underground. This mission was her first time seeing stars with her own eyes, not through recordings or simulations. Remember, Eric said to her, we're not here for confrontation. We gather information, we identify weaknesses, and we prepare the way. Karen nodded. We've trained for this our entire lives, Captain. 3 hours later, the Reckoning had positioned itself in orbit around Proxima Centauri 2, carefully staying on the opposite side from the Confederation outpost. A small stealth shuttle departed from the ship, carrying Karen and her team of 5 intelligence specialists. The shuttle approached the massive space station that served as the Confederation's eyes and ears in this sector. Using the gravitational technology developed by Lisa and her team, they were able to create a small distortion field that bent light around their vessel, making it completely invisible. Look at the size of it, whispered one of Karen's team members as they drew closer to the station. Must be 20,000 aliens in there. Focus, Karen reminded him. We find an access point, we insert our systems, and we leave. No one sees us. No one knows we were ever here. The shuttle matched speed with the slowly rotating station, then attached itself to an external maintenance hatch. Karen's team, dressed in specialized suits that would mask their biological signatures, prepared to enter. We have exactly 45 minutes before the security sweep passes this section again, Karen reminded them. Inside the station, the team moved through maintenance tunnels, avoiding the main corridors where Confederation species of all types went about their daily business. The aliens came in all shapes and sizes, some humanoid, others completely foreign to human anatomy. Karen forced herself to focus on the mission, and not the strange sight of beings from dozens of worlds. They reached a secondary data hub, a small room filled with computer terminals. One team member stood guard at the door, while the others quickly went to work. Their technology has advanced since our records, Karen noted as she connected her device to their system. But the basic architecture is the same. Her fingers moved quickly over her tablet, injecting carefully crafted code into the Confederation network. The program was designed to create hidden backdoors that would allow humanity to access their systems from anywhere. Similar operations were happening at 19 other locations across Confederation space, as the other ships from Earth carried out identical missions. "I'm in," she said after several tense minutes. "Downloading the registry now." The team watched as data flowed into their secure devices, the complete registry of Confederation worlds, military assets, and political structures. Most importantly, they obtained the location of the 7 council worlds where the government that had abandoned Earth was centered. "The beauty of this," Karen explained as they worked, "is that they'll never know we were here until we want them to." One of her team suddenly tensed. Movement in the corridor, someone's coming. They froze as the door to the room slid open. A tall, blue-skinned alien entered, then stopped in surprise at seeing them. For a moment, no one moved. Then Karen stepped forward. "You're not supposed to be here," she said in perfect Confederation, standard language. "This area is under maintenance." The alien looked confused. "I received no notification." Karen's teammate moved quickly behind the alien and pressed a small device to its neck. The alien slumped forward, unconscious. "Mild sedative," Karen explained. "He'll wake up in an hour with no memory of the last few minutes." They positioned the alien at one of the terminals, making it appear as though he had fallen asleep at his post. "Download complete," another team member reported. "We have everything." Karen checked the time. "We need to move. Now." The team made their way back through the maintenance tunnels to their shuttle, moving with the careful precision that came from years of training. No alarm sounded. No one else saw them. As they detached from the station and headed back to the reckoning, Karen allowed herself a small smile of satisfaction. Phase 1 complete. Meanwhile, on a distant mining colony at the edge of Confederation space, Security Officer Paul Wright reviewed reports of unusual energy readings. As a human descended from pre-contact colonists who had left Earth centuries before the Confederation discovered humanity, he had always felt like an outsider. The readings made no sense. They suggested the presence of advanced gravitational manipulation, technology that, according to official Confederation records, didn't exist. Yet here was evidence of it, faint but unmistakable. "Officer Wright," his superior called from across the monitoring room. "The Council is implementing new security protocols across all sectors. Apparently, there have been reports of system anomalies at several outposts." Paul nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. The energy signature he detected reminded him of something his grandmother had once told him. Old stories passed down through generations about Earth's technology before the planet was supposedly destroyed. "Earth," he whispered to himself. But that was impossible. Earth had been destroyed 70 years ago. Everyone knew that. Back on the reckoning, Eric received reports from Karen's team as they returned to the ship. "Mission accomplished, Captain," Karen reported. "We have complete access to their systems. They have no idea we were there." Eric nodded. "Prepare a data package for transmission to Earth, then set course for our next target." As the reckoning prepared to leave the system, Eric stood alone in his quarters looking at a small hologram, an image of Earth as it once was, blue and green and alive. His parents had never seen the real Earth. Neither had he. They had all been born in the darkness beneath a dead world. "This is just the beginning," he said to himself. "They thought they ended us, but we're coming back." The reckoning disappeared from the Proxima Centauri system as silently as it had arrived, leaving behind no trace except a hidden presence in the Confederation's most secure networks, a ghost in their systems, watching, waiting, and gathering intelligence for the day when humanity would reveal itself. And that day was coming soon. They abandoned humanity to die. Now it's payback time. Part 4. 3 years passed since humanity's ships began their silent infiltration of Confederation space. In that time, they had established an invisible network throughout the galaxy, gathering intelligence and placing sleeper agents in key positions. No one in the Confederation suspected that the supposedly extinct humans were watching them. Admiral Julia Nichols stood on the bridge of the Reckoning, which had become the command ship for Earth's now expanded fleet of 50 vessels. At 45, she had been promoted to lead the final phase of humanity's return. Captain Eric Russell stood at her side as her second in command. "All ships report." "Ready, Admiral," Eric said. "Operation Haunting can begin." Julia nodded. "Send the signal." Across the fleet, communications officers activated the protocols they had been preparing for years. One by one, specific Confederation officials received the same message on their private terminals. Humanity remembers the betrayal. Each message was accompanied by proof of exactly how thoroughly their systems had been infiltrated. Security codes, private communications, military plans. The targeted officials included military leaders, planetary governors, and high-level bureaucrats, all carefully selected but none of them members of the High Council. "Now we wait," Julia said. "Let them panic for 24 hours before we make our next move." On the Confederation capital world of Arcturus Prime, Counselor Ben Hayes received his message during a meeting of the High Council. His face turned pale as he saw what appeared on his private screen. The other 6 council members continued their debate, unaware of what had just happened. Ben was human, one of the few who had been off-world when Earth was abandoned 70 years ago. He had built a political career in the Confederation, eventually rising to represent the displaced species on the Council. Most considered him a token appointment, a way for the Confederation to pretend it cared about the smaller, less powerful member worlds. He read the message again. Humanity remembers the betrayal. Below it was a detailed account of the Council, session 70 years earlier where Earth had been deemed strategically expendable. It included names, votes, and private comments never made public. "Excuse me," he said, standing abruptly. "We need to end this meeting now. There's been a security breach." The other counselors looked at him with annoyance. The head of the council, a tall insect-like being called Zathville, clicked his mandibles in irritation. "Whatever human concern you have can wait until we've finished discussing the mining rights dispute," Zathville said dismissively. Ben held up his screen. "Every member of planetary security just received this. So did military command. I suggest you check your own messages." As the counselors checked their devices, alarm spread through the room. Security officers rushed in reporting that similar messages had appeared throughout the government. "How is this possible?" demanded one counselor. "Our systems are supposed to be impenetrable." "More importantly," Ben said quietly, "who sent this? The message claims to be from humanity." Zathville dismissed this with a wave of his clawed hand. "Impossible. Earth was destroyed. This is clearly the work of separatists or terrorists using human tragedy as a cover. I recommend we take this seriously," Ben insisted. "If someone has this level of access to our systems, they could cripple our entire government." After hours of emergency meetings, the council made a decision. They would send a diplomatic vessel to coordinates provided in the message. The ship would be heavily armed but would appear peaceful. They would discover who was behind this intrusion and eliminate the threat. 3 days later, the Confederation diplomatic ship Harmony arrived at the specified coordinates. The crew found only empty space. No planets, no stations, nothing but distant stars. "Scan the area again," ordered Captain Yilt. "There must be something here." Suddenly, alarm signals blared across the bridge. The tactical officer looked up. "In shock. Captain, ships appearing all around us. They just appeared out of nowhere." Outside the viewports, 30 massive vessels materialized as their stealth systems deactivated. They surrounded the Harmony in a perfect sphere formation. Weapons visibly armed but not targeting the Confederation ship. "Incoming transmission," reported the communications officer, her voice shaking. On the main screen appeared the image of Admiral Julia Nichols. She wore a simple dark uniform with Earth's old symbol, the blue and green planet that no longer existed. "I am Admiral Julia Nichols of the Earth Defense Fleet," she said calmly. 73 years ago, your Confederation determined that humanity was expendable. We're here to revise that assessment." Captain Yilt stared in disbelief. "This is impossible. Earth was destroyed. Humanity is extinct. Julia smiled coldly. Clearly your information is outdated. You left us to die. We chose to survive. And now, we've returned. She sent data streams to the Harmony, evidence of Earth's survival, the underground cities, and the technological advances they had made in isolation. The Confederation representatives watched in growing horror as they realized the truth. We request to speak with your council immediately, Julia continued. They have much to answer for. Back on Arcturus Prime, the High Council viewed the transmission with varying degrees of shock and disbelief. Zathville clicked his mandibles nervously. This cannot be happening, he muttered. The humans were supposed to be gone. Ben Hayes felt a strange mixture of emotions: pride in his species' survival, anger at their abandonment, and fear of what might come next. We should negotiate, he told the stunned council after the transmission ended. You have no idea what these humans are capable of. Negotiate, Zathville hissed. They're threatening us. We will mobilize the fleet and crush this aberration. Ben shook his head. You're making the same mistake again. 70 years ago, the council underestimated humanity and thought they could simply be sacrificed. Now you're underestimating them again. 3 days later, representatives from the Confederation arrived at the coordinates provided by Admiral Nichols. This time, they found themselves aboard the Reckoning, face to face with the descendants of the people they had abandoned. Julia sat at the head of the conference table, flanked by Eric and Karen, who had been promoted to head of intelligence operations. On the other side sat 3 Confederation diplomats, including 1 member of the High Council. Let me be clear, Julia said as the meeting began. We've had 3 years to infiltrate your systems, study your defenses, and prepare for this moment. Human agents have been placed throughout Confederation space. Our ships can strike at any target without warning. The Confederation representatives attempted to appear calm, but their body language, much studied by humanity over the past years, betrayed their fear. What do you want? Asked the council member finally. Revenge? War? We want justice, Julia replied. We want the 7 counselors who voted to abandon Earth 70 years ago. They will stand trial for crimes against humanity. Impossible, sputtered one diplomat. That would violate our most sacred political traditions. The council is beyond prosecution, Julia smiled thinly. Perhaps you misunderstand. This isn't a negotiation. Your central defense network is already under our control. Your options are cooperation or demonstration. To prove her point, she nodded to Karen, who entered a command on her tablet. Across 3 Confederation worlds, planetary defense systems simultaneously deactivated for exactly 60 seconds. The diplomats received frantic messages from their security forces, confirming what Julia had just demonstrated. How? One whispered. We had 70 years to advance beyond your technology, Julia explained. 70 years of focus and determination. You left us for dead. Instead, you created your worst nightmare. The meeting ended with the Confederation representatives agreeing to return to Arcturus Prime with humanity's demands. As they departed, one turned to Julia. This will mean war, he warned. Julia shook her head. No. This will mean accountability. For the first time in your history, the Confederation will face consequences for sacrificing those it deemed expendable. As the Confederation ship departed, Eric came to stand beside her. Do you think they'll agree? He asked. They don't have a choice, Julia replied. We've shown them only a fraction of what we can do. Phase 4 is complete. Now we prepare for the final reckoning. They abandoned humanity to die. Now it's payback time. Part 5. The 7 counselors who had voted to abandon Earth 70 years ago stood in the specially constructed courtroom. The trial was being held on the partially restored surface of Earth itself, in what had once been the city of Geneva. Around them, the landscape still showed scars of the Draconis attack, but patches of green had begun to return to the once dead. World Chief Justice Susan Miller, a stern woman of 60, looked down at the defendants from her position on the raised platform. The entire proceedings were being broadcast across all Confederation worlds. This was humanity's moment of reckoning, and they wanted the galaxy to witness it. "This court is now in session," Susan announced. "The charges are crimes against humanity, specifically the willful abandonment of 11 billion souls to certain death." Only 3 of the original counselors were still alive. The others were represented by their political successors, who under Confederation law inherited the responsibilities and consequences of their predecessors' actions. All 7 stood with their heads bowed, surrounded by guards from Earth's fleet. Admiral Julia Nichols sat in the front row of observers, alongside Captain Eric Russell and Lieutenant Karen Walsh. Beside them was Counselor Ben Hayes, who had chosen to side with his species over his political position. His testimony about Confederation attitudes toward younger species had been damning. Security Officer Paul Wright was also present. After detecting traces of human activity at his mining colony post, he had spent months secretly investigating, until the reckoning had appeared in his system. He had immediately joined humanity's cause, providing valuable insights into current Confederation politics and security. The evidence against the counselors was overwhelming. Records from the Confederation's own archives obtained during the infiltration phase showed the cold calculation behind the decision to abandon Earth. The counselors had determined that sacrificing billions of humans would save trillions of their own citizens, a math they found perfectly acceptable. "The defense may present its final statement," Susan announced after days of testimony. Sathville, the current head of the Confederation Council and one of the defendants, stepped forward. His insect-like form seemed to have shrunk during the trial. His once proud posture now stooped. "We made a strategic decision in a time of war," he said, his translator giving his clicks and whistles a flat tone. "The Draconis were overwhelming our forces. We had to protect the core worlds of the Confederation." "And yet," Susan responded, "your records show that just 2 years later, you defeated the Draconis with fewer ships than you withdrew from Earth's defense. You had the resources to save humanity. You chose not to." Zathville had no answer for this. The courtroom remained silent as the 7 defendants awaited their fate. After deliberation, Susan returned to deliver the verdict. "This court finds all defendants guilty of crimes against humanity." A murmur ran through the gathered observers. On worlds across the galaxy, billions watched and waited for humanity's revenge. "The question now," Susan continued, "is the sentence. The prosecution has asked for the maximum penalty allowed under our laws." Julia stood, her expression solemn. "We have the right to demand their lives as payment for the billions lost. That would be justice under any system of law." The counselors tensed, expecting the worst. "However," Julia continued, "we did not fight our way back from extinction to become executioners. The sentence this court imposes is this: the guilty will live out their lives here on Earth, helping to rebuild what their decision destroyed." Surprise rippled through the courtroom. This was not the vengeance many had expected. Susan nodded. "The defendants will be assigned to restoration teams across the planet. They will work alongside the descendants of those they abandoned. They will help make Earth habitable again. They will learn what it means to be human." The trial concluded and the observers filed out of the courtroom. Outside, the sky was visible, still darkened by dust in the atmosphere, but gradually clearing. In the distance, construction robots worked to clear rubble from what would eventually become a new city. Later that evening, Julia stood with Eric, Karen, and Paul on a hillside overlooking the restoration work. "Many wanted death for those counselors," Eric said. "They expected revenge." Julia shook her head. "Revenge would have been easy, making them face the consequences of their actions every day for the rest of their lives. That's justice." Paul looked out at the horizon, where the sun was setting behind a distant mountain range. "I grew up hearing stories about Earth. My ancestors left centuries before the attack, but they never forgot their homeland. I never dreamed I would actually stand here." "What happens now?" Karen asked. "We've had our reckoning. Where does humanity go from here?" "That's the most important question," Julia replied. "We could isolate ourselves, turn our backs on the galaxy as it turned its back on us, or we can show them a better way." As they spoke, a message arrived from Arcturus Prime. The Confederation Council, shaken by the trial and humanity's display of power, had voted to radically restructure their government. The system that had allowed older, more established species to dominate decision-making was being dismantled. In its place would be a new organization based on principles of mutual defense and true cooperation. "They're asking Earth to lead the transition," Julia said, reading the message with surprise. "They want our help to build something better." "Why would we help them after what they did?" Eric asked. "Because revenge is a moment," Julia answered. "But changing the galaxy lasts forever." Over the next several years, Earth became the center of a new coalition of worlds. The technology humans had developed in isolation, particularly the advanced gravitational drives, offered solutions to problems the Confederation had struggled with for centuries. Human ships were deployed not for war but to help developing worlds and prevent the exploitation that had been common under the old system. 5 years after the trial, Susan Miller stood with Zathville, the former council head, at the opening of a memorial park in what had once been North America. The alien, once so dismissive of humanity, had become a dedicated advocate for the restoration work. "I did not understand your species," Zathville admitted. "We saw you as primitive, expendable. We were wrong." Susan nodded. "The mistake the Confederation made was thinking our strength was in our weapons or our technology. But it was always in our refusal to accept defeat." In orbit above them, ships arrived daily from across the galaxy, representatives from dozens of worlds eager to establish relations with the species that had done the impossible, survived extinction, and returned to hold the mighty accountable. His quarters aboard the Reckoning, now serving as an educational vessel for young cadets, Paul Wright looked at a small object given to him by his grandmother years ago. A simple metal coin with the image of Earth as it once was. He remembered her words, "Never forget where we came from." Humanity had been abandoned to die. Instead, they had become the architects of a new galactic order, one built on the understanding that true strength comes not from power, but from resilience in the face of betrayal, and no species in the known galaxy was more resilient than humans.